Well, welcome everyone to this first Mid-Norfolk gathering. As you probably know, we've had a few of these now with different levels of attendance, I have to say. Generally speaking, half a dozen to 10 really. And that's worked out quite nicely because I think it means everybody's got a chance to talk a bit more perhaps and exchange thoughts and ideas. We'll see if anyone else joins us today. I will be posting the recording on our YouTube channel so other people can see that. Here's someone else, Martine. And then basically, if you could introduce yourselves, and also if you've got any thoughts, ideas, topics, issues that you'd like to share or discuss today, that would be helpful to know up front as well. So say welcome to Martine. Good to see you, nearly. Perhaps Richard, you're top left in my screen. Would you like to kick off?
Happy to do so. I'm Richard Bierman, and I'm here because I'm chair of the Grapes Hill Community Garden in the centre of Norwich. Just a practical point, Nigel. It'd be interesting to know I haven't looked at any of your other meetings to see what's discussed, but calling this one Mid-Norfolk, I think, has confused people who live in Norwich because we're not in Mid-Norfolk. We're never classed with Dereham usually, which is Mid-Norfolk. So,
yeah, okay, I take your point. I did try, I don't know if I did it on this one, but I did try where there was that ambiguity just to spell out a little bit more detail. So East Norfolk.
Yes, there was some detail on there, but I don't know. There's no good way of dividing Norfolk properly.
No. Perhaps I'll say
found that in 2009 when we looked at unitary government. It doesn't work. Where do you put Acle? That's the problem.
I won't say Greater Norwich. Perhaps I'll say Norwich and Mid Norfolk next time. Perhaps that would help.
Yes.
Anyway,
yes.
Carry on. That's helpful.
Yes, well, Greater Norwich has another script designation as well for the Greater Norwich development. Grapes Hill Community Garden. Yes, a small site in the centre of Norwich. Maybe some of you have seen it and been there. We've been going 12 years now. We've got 2 new members of staff who started in February, and we have a programme of events coming up. We normally run gardening sessions every Wednesday and alternate Sundays for volunteers to come in. We've also got 3 major events planned. Nature in the Garden on Sunday, the 28th of May. That's the late bank holiday Sunday. And then we've got an international celebration of international culture on Sunday, the 25th of June, which is at the end of Refugee Week. And we're working with Refugee Plus and Bridge Plus and those organisations in Norwich to promote international cooperation, and we're having food, music, possibly language taster sessions as well, which we did last year. That worked very well. And that fits neatly with our current status. Norwich, Grapes Hill Community Garden became the first Norwich Garden of Sanctuary in February, which is under the City of Sanctuaries movement. So designed to make us a welcoming space for all types of people across the board. And as part of that, we've expanded a bit. We're now not only running gardening sessions in the garden, but we've got a yoga teacher who's coming to do yoga in the garden, and we've got a meditation tutor who's coming to do some meditation sessions in the garden. So we hope that all works well. Finally, in July, we'll have another Sunday event, a public event. The Sunday, the 23rd of July, art in the garden, where we get some local artists in to put up pieces of work, and they have stalls and items for sale and information about artwork. We have some pieces of artwork in the garden. If you visited, we have some sculpture work, but we don't have any permanent artwork because a lot of the stuff is paintings, needs to be undercover, so they just display it and then take it away again. But I'm going fairly hands-off with it because I'm involved in other things, so I'm leaving it very much to others. And as Anne remarked earlier, if you let go a bit, people pop up and do things. It's quite remarkable how that happens. Whereas if you're always present and always there, you get the impression that I don't never need to go there because that person is doing it. So it's always good when you're needing extra help to try and step back a little bit.
Yeah,
that's what I've learned recently.
Anything you want to talk about today, particularly, Richard?
I think I've covered most of it already.
So we've
So
had the
yeah,
advert.
yeah,
We've had the advert.
we're open to visits. We're having a couple of
Yeah,
visits from the Outdoor Projects Network. If you've
yeah.
not come across that, it's an organisation in Norwich area, run by a lady at Norwich City Council. So one of the engagement officers. Growing wise, it's all going well. Everything's looking nice and coming up. Daffodils were over. Blossoms out on various fruit trees because it's an edible garden, Grapes Hill. That's the intention, that the majority of the stuff in it is edible.
Yeah, I would say the various events you mentioned. Obviously, we're very happy to promote those on the Facebook group. If you let me have the details or put them on your website and we can share them, that'd be very good. And specifically, the one on the 23rd, that falls within the Green Care Festival period. So again, if you'd like to slot it into that, have a word with Diane Davies, and we can promote that as part of the festival.
Yes, absolutely. That's why we went for that weekend. And as soon as we've got a few more details about what times and who's coming, I'll get Caroline, our outreach worker, to let you know about all of them, in fact, because you're all very welcome to come along to any of them. But also, as Nigel knows, we've had a visit from the Green Care Network members to the garden and Train Wood, so we could always repeat that at some time for your convenience.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Anne, over to you.
Oh, okay. So our community allotment, unlike Grapes Hill, is very new. We set up last March, and the purpose for setting it up really was we live in a very small village in East Tuddenham, 165 houses, and we know a lot of people are quite lonely.
Yep.
And I was looking for something that I could contribute to our community. I love gardening. I come from a background of working with people, so the two came together. So the community allotment is mainly for growing vegetables and fruit, but this year we're expanding a little bit into flowers, because what we do is we have areas that are owned or managed by individuals. So they rent a plot of land, or they rent a raised bed. And then we have areas that are for the community, and the community growing areas are where we share all of the produce with our local community. And we thought this year we would expand it by having flowers, because that's another nice thing to do, to be able to take a bunch of flowers to somebody and just to share them with them. So that's sort of the heart of our ethos, is that we are about the community. But alongside that, and sort of underpinning it without being too explicit, is that we're very much aware that if you're in the garden, if you are out in the green outdoors, then it's so much better for not only your physical but your mental health. And having done myself a lot of the Thrive courses, and a lot of the mental health awareness courses, and my background as well, I wanted that to be part of our work. But I haven't made it explicit because I think sometimes it can frighten people off. I think sometimes people get a little bit, oh, is that somewhere where you go if you're not feeling, too well? Or I just wanted it to be an area where we're very welcoming. So we always have the kettle on. There's areas to sit where we can have tea and coffee. It's always a cake or some biscuits. And there's a place where people who perhaps aren't even gardening, they just come and join us. They're out for a walk, they see what we're doing, and they come and sit with us. That's really the purpose of it all. It's growing slowly. And Richard, I would love to come and just talk to you at some point and just share some of the work that you've been doing, because I think we can learn a lot from you. But we will never be quite as big, because we are a village and you are a city. So, there's a huge difference there. It's been quite interesting because as we've grown, people have approached us. So, for example, the parish council approached us and said, we'd like to put some planters in our village. We've been thinking about it for years, but actually now you're growing stuff. Would you grow the flowers for us? So we're almost triggering things happening beyond our community allotment. So that feels very positive.
Excellent.
That's probably most of what I want to tell you. But perhaps something I'd love to perhaps talk a little bit about as a group is where we've had some really good support from other people. So, for example, we've had amazing support from Inspiring Communities, the Breckland Council. And I'd be happy if anybody wants to know about that, I can tell you more. But we've had some amazing support from them. We've had amazing support from Men's Shed. Men's Shed have come and helped us build the fruit cages and compost bins and things. So just, it would be lovely to share ideas of how people have found other people who will work alongside you for particular projects, or but I've got a little list of people who've been supportive of us, if it's helpful to you.
Brilliant.
That's probably all for the moment.
Thank you, Anne. That's really interesting. We'll pick up the support thing, I'm sure, in a moment. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Need to take a tea.
Yeah,
Jenny, come in quickly.
Me?
Yes.
I'm Jenny Pedley. My background is NHS physio in London for a long time, and fine arts. And I've started a community interest company called Edible East. So I don't have I suppose our focus is public engagement, art, science and horticulture. Nick Thompson is a horticulturalist, many of you might know. He's one of the 3 directors. And the other one is Tara Sampi, who's an artist and a gardener, and myself. So we have no core funding or anything. We're just freelance people who do as much as we can afford to, really. So we've just, thanks to Nigel, putting Nick Thompson in touch with Great Yarmouth Council. We've just been running some workshops about trees and a bit about forest gardening in Great Yarmouth. And we try and bring, the idea is really to tackle the various crises that are going on with health and the climate and biodiversity and everything, bringing together the science, particularly if it's local from the research park. Then I've worked a lot with them. We had a trail in lockdown, the Art Science Trail around Norwich, based in various venues, and about the future of food. So I'm trying to pull together the bits that seem to me rather separate, of creativity, really high quality cultural events, and upskilling people with understanding about climate and health and growing stuff and the practical skills, and so various things come out of that. At the moment, I'm running some workshops in schools paid for by, organised by SOS, Students Organised for Sustainability. And one of those workshops, I've brought in some citizen science from the Earlham Institute, who are, do people know who that is? It's one of the institutions on the research park, and they are part of something called Darwin Tree of Life, which is about a 10-year project across the UK and different parts of the world to try and sequence the DNA of as much of our biodiversity as they can. So the little citizen science project is called Barcoding the Broads, and you get to have the opportunity to select a plant, mash up a piece of leaf and carefully prepare it for its PCR, like your COVID sample, and then the lab can then, well, depending on, we're doing this with primary kids. If you were doing it with adults, they could do more of the stages, and then the lab send it off, and you can get your plant identified through its DNA. So that's the sort of citizen science thing we might be involved in. I had a residency at the Quadram Institute in 2019, and some of the activities from that, or one of them, is actually in the historic churches all summer until the end of Heritage Open Days in September. So you can go to the headquarters of the Heritage Churches, which is St Martin's, opposite the Palace in Norwich, and you can have a contemplative activity to make it's sort of a brass rubbing activity, but it's about the links between gut microbes and health. And then you can hang the image that you've made onto our microbe alcove, kind of hanging your hopes for health on the microbe, which seems to be the way forward. So a whole variety of stuff. But I really hate writing grants, which means we do a lot of stuff for nothing.
Excellent. Anything you want to particularly talk about today, Jenny?
I haven't been to any of these, so I wasn't quite sure what it's going to be. The only other thing to look out for, so if you're looking out in Norwich, that activity is listed, though I think the opening times might be wrong for the church because they've reduced them. And I'm installing an exhibit at Unthank Road at the old electrical shop. In the windows is kind of going to be work in progress, developing along there, inspired by a variety of things that I'm not quite sure whether to explain yet, or whether to leave people to guess. I haven't quite worked that out. Anyway,
tantalise us. Here we are.
Yes, it's biology. It's plant sex, really. That's the starting point.
Fascinating. Thank you very much. Peter, you're next in the line.
Oh, hello. My first one of these too. I'm Peter Cutting. I'm currently chair of the Friends of Hayham Park, which, as some people know, sort of sits in the middle of what's known as colloquially as the Golden Triangle. It's the smallest of the historic parks laid out by Sir Andy's Winch as a big job creation project just after the First World War. A time of, actually, when you go back and look at it, it's a time of great discontent. I know we've probably heard of the general strike of 26, but there was certainly a lot of rumbling of discontent for the people coming home from the war, land fit heroes and all that. And it was an attempt to try and soak up lots and lots of unemployed men in those days, of course, to do basically landscaping using spades and wheelbarrows. And when you see the amount of material they've shifted, especially a place like Eaton Park, it really is quite phenomenal, the amount of work that was put in. Hayham Park is almost certainly the most visited park in the city by a long chalk. It certainly was much more popular during lockdown than it's ever been before. I think a lot of people who live around here actually discovered it during lockdown too. And it stayed very, very popular, and thus has an awful lot of footfall. And I think it's showing that it's looking rather battered at the moment, to say the least, because it really is quite a small park and an awful lot of people are using it. The reason I'm here is that this next year actually is the centenary of the park opening. It was constructed between 1920 and 1924 on what was then the edge of the city, of course, and it was a sort of adjunct to the recreation ground which existed then, where Recreation Road School is now. It's a recreation ground with a sort of a cycle track around it and so on back in the day. So that's the origins of the thing. We've got a couple of projects to mark, to celebrate 100 years of the park. One of which, well, both of which actually are quite to do with enhancing the biodiversity, which is certainly a council policy now in the ground that it owns, including the parks. And you really, if we mentioned earlier about, sort of where help's available, where there might be some expertise we can draw upon, because, like any of these committees of friends tend to be a kind of a, rather a loose group of people with all sorts of different backgrounds. And our main project, actually, the one we're funding ourselves, is we want to put a pond in. We have a pond at the moment, but it's quite a small one. And the idea is to make a much bigger one in an area of the park, and really, make that as I suppose a wider variety of different things are likely to live in it and around it as we can. So that's something that is focusing our minds for next year, and to have it ready for a reasonable time in 24. We need to get going on it now, and that's our next big task really, is to get going on that. So that's us, and really I'm here to listen and to learn. And if anything, that comes up that might be of use to us in terms of people or organisations that are could be helpful to us, then I'd very much like to hear about that. Thank you.
Excellent, Peter. Thank you very much, and welcome. Hayham Park is one I've not visited. I'm shameful to say, actually. You've got tucked away, aren't you, a little bit more than perhaps some of the other bigger ones, and I never come into the city that way, so I sort of never pass it and never think, oh, I must pop in and have a look. But I will make a point of coming and visiting.
Okay, great.
And last but not least, Martine, welcome. We haven't seen you before, I don't think, but you're very welcome. You'd like to introduce yourself? You're on mute. Inevitably, that's got to be said at least once in one of these meetings, isn't it?
Is that better?
Yes, lovely. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi. Yes, I've very much come in listen and learn mode, I'm afraid. But I've come as an individual. I'm just at the tail end of my master's, which was supposed to be about sustainable food and natural resources, but kind of took a bit of a U-turn, really, or not really a U-turn, but a slightly different track, and ended up all about nature connection through food and natural resources, I would say, and the science of nature connection, which is I've just absolutely loved. So from September, I'm very much hoping to be running workshops of all sorts, just encouraging adults specifically into just about any way of kind of interacting with nature and getting that connection going, because to me it just seems to be the thing, as Jenny mentioned, that underlies the mental health crisis, the climate change crisis, the biodiversity collapse, has all got that kind of disconnection from nature underneath it. So I've come to kind of find out what everyone else is doing and where I'll be able to kind of slot in with that as soon as my academic bit's over and I can kind of roll the sleeves up, really.
Excellent. Where were you based, actually?
I'm in Norwich. I'm quite close to both Hingham Park and Unthank Road.
Right.
As
Sorry,
were both previously mentioned.
Yeah, you mentioned those different, what I call shades of green. I think that's the phrase I keep rolling out, because the interconnection that you've referred to is becoming certainly increasingly obvious to me, I think, and some of the things that we've facilitated as a network are starting to make the connections and joining those things up. You're out working in a conservation group, or you're in a gardening group, you're getting mental health benefits and physical benefits. You're perhaps growing food, so making food security more real, and so on and so forth. So very interesting. Okay, I don't normally say much at these, he said, lying, because I normally wear my Green Care Network hat. But as I live in the mid Norfolk area, as I've defined it, would it be okay if I just said a little bit about my local scene and what I'm involved in there? And again, I'm interested to make connections, I guess, as well. Some of you will know that we held at Havringland, which is where I'm about 10 miles north of the city, held an Earth Day fair on Saturday at our local church. Our local church, which I'm involved with, not particularly in a religious way, but really as a community resource, managed to get some lottery funding towards the end of last year. We got about £250,000 to spend on repairs and improvements to the building, but also to set up a number of activities and events over the coming couple of years, which are heritage related in the broadest sense. And we launched one of those on Saturday called Living Landscape. And it's really basically, I suppose, an attempt to work with landowners, farmers, businesses, residents in communities that adjoin Havringland, as well as Havringland itself, to take a joined up approach to improving biodiversity. So that could include, farmers gapping hedges, planting new areas of woodland, restoring ponds, whatever it might be, a whole range of potential activities. And I was really very pleased with the launch. We had some fantastic support from organisations such as Natural England, Wild East. Tim O'Riordan, who many of you will know, gave us a really inspiring opening to the launch. And we had one or two farmers, one local, one not so local, who came to talk about regenerative farming and their approach to that, which is all again about, nature recovery, if you like. So that was great. And we're now, I guess, thinking about what next. And I think it's a case of us trying to make contact with local people, still trying to do that, to generate interest and momentum, and then getting expertise in from the likes of the Wildlife Trust, Natural England and others to look at the landscape and say, well, look, there's a priority for you, create a meadow there, or leave that strip wild, or perhaps, plant a few trees there or whatever. The idea being, as you'll, I'm sure, appreciate, about connectivity, networks in a nature sense, enabling habitats to be joined up, food sources to be joined up, and so on. So that's quite exciting. That's something that's going to roll out over the next couple of years. The other thing I suppose I ought to mention is a couple of perhaps more general things, which I'm involved with wearing the other hat, the Green Care Network hat, which again you'll probably be familiar with. One is First Nature, which is the campaign to expand nature connection opportunities for children and young people. And we launched that on Saturday as well, again with a fantastic range of presentations, including 3 from young people themselves, touching on things like climate anxiety and how Nature Connection can perhaps help ameliorate some of that, and getting involved in projects at a local level can assist, etc. And we've got a website in the making for that. We've got a group of different organisations involved in developing, if you like, a number of strands of activity. One of those is about awards. The Bishop of Norwich very kindly has offered us £1,000 a year for 3 years to have an award in his name to award to organisations or projects that do great or will be doing great work in expanding Nature Connection opportunities for children and youngsters. We may be looking at other awards from other organisations like CPRE, Clarion Futures, and so on. We've also started to develop a sort of communication strategy, I suppose you might say. But with any campaign, obviously, we're out to win hearts and minds and persuade people in all different sorts of groups to do things, whether that's to expand Nature Connection opportunities, to be more aware of what's already on your doorstep and to take advantage of that, and so on and so forth. So communication is the second strand. The third strand is very much about working with schools, and it's interested in hear what you said, Jenny, about doing workshops in schools. Many of the organisations involved in First Nature, I think, are aware of the pressure that schools are under, whether that's financial, time, whatever it might be. So we're trying to develop a coordinated approach to them in terms of encouraging them and then supporting them to provide opportunities to connect with nature, primarily, but not solely, on their own school sites or perhaps within the vicinity, local area, etc. And interestingly, one of the ideas which has only just come up recently, is something which I think we'll discuss further, is the financial pressures on the schools and how those are affecting their ability to actually have school visits to nature conservation areas, for example, and so on. And so one possibility is that the campaign might perhaps raise some money to enable schools to have funding in order to ensure that those activities continue and they don't fall because of the other economic pressures on them and so on. So that's that. And what was the other area? I can't remember the other area, but there's four sort of major areas of activity, and that's sort of pedaling along quite nicely, I think. The other one, which may be quite interesting to you, Peter, is what's now become called the Norfolk Community Nature Forum. And this is a very large group. I think there's about 70 or 80 contacts involved in this from a whole range of organisations, statutory, voluntary, local, etc. And they are all working towards nature recovery. So that whole business of biodiversity improvement that you mentioned. And we've actually put in a bid to the Lottery Climate Action Fund for funding to enable us to develop the model of community-led nature recovery, a bit like the one I was talking about in my local area, Living Landscape. That's perhaps an example of that. How we can develop that and have a coordinated and resourced approach to inspiring communities and supporting communities to sort of take action at a landscape level. So that's on the burner. And again, if you're looking for support and advice, Peter, I don't know whether you've been in touch with the Wildlife Trust.
Yeah, we have been actually. Yeah.
And obviously, in terms of practical help, the conservation volunteers, and I think there are various conservation groups around who are active that might be able to help you with the sort of the creation of the pond and so on you talked about as well. But I'm happy to, put a few other names your way if that's going to be helpful to you.
Yes, it would be.
So I think that's where I'm at. And there are, if you've got any questions or anything you'd like a bit more information on, then shout now, or we can follow it up later. Richard, you got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Nigel. Very informative. Just going to come back on a couple of points that Peter and Martine raised. Peter, there's also the Good Gym, who are really good at doing major works in Norwich. If you're thinking of doing this pond by hand in memory of Sandy's Winch and his work team, but if not, there's also the possibility of getting some grant money for professional work. I would say somebody like, the national organisations, Frog Life or Amphibian Watch, all those sort of people who support would be a good approach to get a new pond created. And of course, you'll have to bear in mind it's in a public space and all the necessary rules that go with how you keep it safe for public use.
Yeah.
Martine, great to hear you're doing workshops starting soon, September, or if you're interested in starting a bit sooner, we put a programme of workshops together in the Grapes Hill Community Garden around connecting with nature, making herbal teas, identifying plants, potting on seed, all those sorts of gardening things. But we'd love to have you at an addition. So if you send me your contact details, email, and your what you might put on, I'll get Caroline, our outreach coordinator, to see if we can slot you in late August, early September somewhere as a trial, if you're interested. And we normally apply for funding for those workshops, so they're free at the point of delivery to those who want them. That's the idea, but we haven't secured that just yet. Well, the only thing I was going to come back on was working with schools. I was the school governor and minibus driver and school visits governor for many years. And it's not the funding that was a problem then. It was the red tape around health and safety, risk assessments, taking teachers out of the classroom. What do you do with the rest of the classes? So there is an issue about them not going on school visits, but it's not primarily, or wasn't then, the money issue. The money can be found from various sources, and there are bodies that support out of school visits, but it's the time out of the national curriculum. The fact that Ofsted don't recognise a school visit as of educational value. So if you're not doing maths, English and science in some demonstrable way, I think you'll probably have to work hard to convince schools that it's a good thing to do. It'd be great if it happened more often. We did do a school visit when I was at Magdalen Gates quite easily. We took year 2 and walked them up to the local allotments where the caretaker had an allotment. But that was a low impact visit and very low cost as well, which I think is also appealing to schools. Something that you can do without going too far and without having to hire a coach to go somewhere, because coach prices, I don't know if you're aware, at school trips, absolutely shot up.
£300 I was told yesterday from my local area, to just literally go up the road.
Yeah,
I mean, the point you make about the other aspects of this, Richard, absolutely, and those have been raised by people in our initial discussion, that it isn't, as you say, not just about money. It is about all the bureaucracy, the organisation, and the knock-on effect, I suppose, in terms of the way the school can operate and so on. Any observations on that, Anne, from your experience? Because you're a former head teacher.
As a former head teacher, I totally agree with what Richard talks about in terms of all the health and safety and all the tick boxes you have to do. But last year we had a local school for children with emotional and behavioural difficulties coming to us every week, and they had their own minibus and they were coming to us, and the children, I mean, it just benefited. Everybody said, the staff said, it benefited them hugely. They're not able to come this year because of redundancies. Staffing is cut. They don't have enough people back in school because they need a high ratio with those children, and so those children are not able to come this year. So Richard's absolutely right. It's not just about the money. It's about what's happening in the school structures at the moment, which is we can't instantly resolve, but I think we need to find ways if possible. And just another thought, Nigel, around you were getting funding for your First Nature. Norfolk Gardens Trust have a bursary, an annual bursary for children. Anything involving children and being out in the green outdoors. So they're probably worth contacting.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, even if it's a case of us pulling together and promoting what's already out there in terms of awards and so on, that's I think a function of that campaign. It's raising awareness and so on, which is part of what we're about. So thank you for that. I
don't know that Norfolk Gardens Trust have any engagement with Norfolk Green Care, and it would probably be a good thing for them to do.
I think we have members, to be honest. I can't remember names now, but I think we are connected. But thank you for that thought. Just to say on the campaign more generally, I mean, and this business of schools and connecting and so on. I mean, I think that's something that we will continue to discuss. So it may be an appropriate time, Richard, and you can contribute to that with your experience and help develop something which maybe can make it a bit easier. It won't perhaps solve all the problems, but if it's made a bit easier, whether that's a bit of funding, whether that's a bit of volunteer support, or predefined health and safety stuff that can be standardized and made easier to fill in, that can perhaps smooth the path a bit.
Thanks. Good stuff.
Anyone else want to come in on anything we've said so far, or any other points for discussion, really? Jenny,
just a few of the things you're saying make me think of Nick Thompson's skills in terms of teaching surveying an area. So we developed a course which he would lead on all the horticultural parts, where a community can survey a piece of land and gain all the skills they need to think about all the aspects of it, and then think through how it's being used now, how the community would like to use it, and how to help mitigate climate change issues, or maybe grow food if they want to, or all those things. But from what Nigel, you're saying about getting expertise in to think about where to have a meadow or whatever it is, he could be teaching those skills to people in the local community, and then kind of helping them form a group so that they can think how to take it forward. And if there's enough budget, then that we developed a way to use our art, our creative stuff to kind of help them envisage stuff in exciting ways. But it also seems like, and that's something he's been doing in schools. I introduced him to science, art and writing, and they've been working on forest gardens around the schools. So he's been teaching some elements of this to the children in the schools so that they can reimagine their school grounds and think about biodiversity and everything. But it also would work for parks, or it seems very empowering way to go.
I can't remember that you're on the contact list for First Nature, Jenny, are you?
I get a bit, and I'm in so many of your groups, I sometimes get them muddled up. I think so, because you were working on the bid and I got those. Was that First Nature? I commented on.
I think that was Climate Action Fund that I referred to. I think,
okay.
Just to say that if you're interested, we've got probably a couple of hours workshop that we're probably going to go for towards the end of May, where we're literally going to take stock of where we've got to with the campaign, and then think about where we want to go for the next year and what the priorities are, and get some strands of work underway. So if you,
that's fine. Yeah,
because I was along to that you'd be very welcome, and anyone else
nice.
really as well.
More because we started off more on the food side, didn't I, with Garden Organic?
That's right.
That group. And the other thing is, we'd love to come and run some workshops at Grapes Hill. I tried to get Grapes Hill involved with our art trail back in whenever it was, the end of 2020, but no, then I think you weren't so well. Anyway, nobody got back to me then, but you're doing so many fantastic things now. It's so impressive.
Thank you.
Could we email you?
Now we've come out the other side of lockdown, we're looking much more to do these things, but it was very difficult in 2020 because we couldn't do the things we wanted to do, let alone outside.
Yeah, well, that's why we installed a trail so people could just go around in their households outside and contemplate issues. But we do have some outdoor prints that were specially printed onto metal that relate to growing themes, and which could be cited temporarily with you, or I don't know, there's options. But also we do various creative plant workshops. Tara, my colleague, prints with plants. She's a passionate plants person, so we were making sort of concertina books about growing, and I've got so many peas. I've bought tons and tons of peas and sunflowers for sharing, for sprouting, but you could also plant them in the ground. Which I've just got these big buckets left from last year. So we could come and do sprouting workshops as well for windowsills. Or
you could. Our garden's rather full at the moment of various things growing.
But for people to do at home,
we're not a big space. That's under trouble. We need an allotment as well.
I mean, we gave them away so people could grow them at home on their windowsills in sprouting for salads without soil. Which is a handy sort of way of, if you haven't got land at home.
That's very good.
Anyway, just
Jenny, do you know Ruthie Collins?
Yes.
Fine, I thought you might. She's in your area, I think, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. Yeah. We hang.
She came out with her trail and put that round the church on Saturday, which was a big success. That was really good.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we had the sort of arts element in our event. which was really
Yeah,
good.
I was at the research park hanging out with John Innes, and
Yeah. Oh, is he still alive?
he's quite elderly now, yes.
Okay. Any other sort of observations or thoughts or comments, anyone? Peter, what have you made of what you've heard so far? Has any of that been useful?
That's better. Thank you, Knight. Yeah. So I made a few notes. Yeah, that's a few things being mentioned, which I'll certainly follow up. It's always reassuring to have suggestions that you've kind of already thought of in a way too, which is great. What I was going to do, I was going to suggest, Nigel, was if you do want to do a park visit, then I'll be very happy to show you around.
Great.
And point out some of the features that make it a Grade 2 listed park.
Excellent.
So if you'd like to do that sometime, I'm sure we could organise it.
Yeah, I'm actually also a Green Flag Award judge, so I think Higham Park is one of the few that I haven't sort of judged in Norwich and surroundings as well. So it'd be interesting to wear that hat as well, perhaps.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, I'll be in touch then. Great.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Martine, have you made anything from this? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask actually, I haven't looked that much at the website, whatever. I think I've just been on your Facebook group. Is there any sort of directory of all the people that are involved with you with maybe contact details? So for example, for the people here today, if you want to contact anyone, is there a way that we know how to do that?
Very good point. Are you actually a member of the network? I couldn't remember whether you were.
I think I joined something. I didn't pay anything. I think
No, you don't pay anything. But did you join? You joined the Facebook group, but did you actually fill in a
think so.
form? Yeah, fine.
So.
Okay. My apologies. I don't keep up. We've got about 300 members now. Yeah, I mean, you make a very good point. Two comments really. One thing I was going to ask you, which I've asked all the other gatherings, is if you would like to share your emails via a sort of follow-up email that I'll send with the link to the recording.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be helpful, because obviously some of you have said we'll get in touch or whatever. You may well already know each other's connections, but that's one thing. But the other point you make is a sort of work in progress. We've been trying to develop our register of members, which we will be sending round to everybody shortly, so that if anyone is willing to share their contact details, as opposed to just this is my name, this is my role, or whatever, this is my organisation, then we'll start to do that on the basis that people, on the register of members, basically keep that information to themselves. They don't share it without permission, etc. So, all the GDPR stuff we have to be aware of. So that will be coming out in the next month or two, hopefully. We haven't had an enormous response, I have to say. I mean, I think there was some initial enthusiasm for the idea of sharing contact details, but not many people have actually come back and said, yeah, count me in, sort of thing. So I think what we'll do is we'll press on and publish it in its the form that it is with those people who have agreed, and then hopefully it'll gather momentum and people will see the value of it, and gradually, we'll get more people on there in terms of sharing their contact details. Does that sound helpful?
Yeah, I mean, it's just really nice. It's great to hear today the sort of expertise that is around, and also the other things that people are already doing, because then you kind of fire off each other and hopefully come together and be able to make all of our events even better. So it would be really nice to know, because obviously there's not many people here in the wider network, what expertise there is already out there doing great stuff.
The other thing that we're doing with the website is that there's, again, when we set this up a couple of years ago now, the website, we got information from a whole range of projects that we were aware of that are joined, that are providing, if you like, forms of green care. Grapeshill is on there, for example. I'm not sure if East Tuddenham's on there yet, Anne, but maybe it should be. We do a little profile, photograph, contact details, so people, if they want to contact that particular project, then they can do that. And there's a map showing you where these projects are. We're doing at the moment, again, it's been a bit slow to get going, but we're doing an update on the information that's on there at the moment, but also at the same time going through the register of members and trying to spot projects that aren't on there and approaching them to see whether they want to put their information on there as well. So we'll get a much more comprehensive picture of, if you like, what green care is going on across Norfolk on the website, which will obviously be very much more accessible than things are at the moment, perhaps.
I was just going to ask Nigel, I don't think we've updated our contact details on that because they've changed fairly recently. And our outreach coordinator, Caroline Fernandez, as the main.
Yes, I appreciate that. Well, that's the sort of stuff we want to get updated.
How do we do that? Do we just email you?
No, there's one of our volunteers called Lauren Benker has been emailing, I think, existing projects. And I have to say she's not had much response again, which is disappointing. Basically, I haven't seen what she sent, but I understand what she's done is ask those projects, you know, are you happy with what's on the website at the moment? Do you want to change anything? So I will
gone into the black hole that was the previous email address.
Maybe, yeah, we'll see. Anyway, I'm having a meeting with her shortly, and we'll just review where we are with that and think about perhaps a better way of getting that going. And
put it on the list to contact her after the 5th of May. The other thing is when people join as members, as we did originally, I thought we agreed that we would tick the box that says, yes, you can share our membership detail with other members, or is that not still the case? Is that something we have to do separately?
I don't recall that being on the original.
No, it wasn't. It was discussed at the first AGM.
Oh yeah. No, I think it was agreed that we would do it at the AGM. Absolutely right. I think what I just described is really the follow on from that, which is actually to approach members and say, well, are you happy for your contact details to be put on this register?
Yeah.
And as I say, we've tried it, I think, a couple of times and not had a huge response. But
I think you asked us in October last year.
That's right. Yeah.
Our 2 members of staff had just left, so we didn't have anybody. So I think
sure.
We put it to do later box. Of course, that's fatal, isn't it? It's never happened.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There, people
are Lawrence. If your person Lawrence is on the website as contact this person about your change of contact details, that would be a good way for people to be.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll take a note of that.
It's hard to keep up because we're in contact with various groups and organisations, and I just had a nightmare trying to change our contact email address with Garden Organic, who we're members of. It's still out of date, the stuff they've got up there, and I've emailed them 2 or 3 times with it, and I finally got through to somebody on the phone. So but I don't know when they're going to change it, And the problem with out of date information, and the other thing that often is asked for, is quite tricky for us at Great Seal Garden, is a postcode. We don't actually have a postcode because we're not a building. And we don't have a building, so I don't know how allotments get around it. But if people want to find you,
well, there is something called just 3 words. If you
just 3 words, right?
That's an approach you can take, I think.
A young person.
That's what we use.
What ours are.
Yeah, there's something else I came across yesterday. Someone mentioned to me about being able to. Now, what was it? I think it was actually mapping the coordinates of a piece of land.
Yeah,
and there's a site that will enable you to do that. I can't remember the name of it, but what just 3 words seems like a useful approach if you haven't got a postcode. We have a similar thing with our church. Our postcode actually takes you to the farm opposite rather than the church, which is a bit off to the sort of off the beaten track sort of thing, literally. Yeah. Anne.
Nigel, you mentioned earlier that you weren't sure whether East Tuddenham were on the list of projects. Could you just put us on if you're having that done?
Well, yeah. I mean, all we need, Anne, is you can send it to me if you like. But if you look on the website, you'll get an example of what's already on there. The sort of literally 2 or 3 paragraphs about the project, maybe a photograph.
Yeah.
If you've got a logo, we can include that, and then contact details.
Perfect.
Let me know and we can slot it in.
I'll do that. Thanks, Nigel. Yeah.
Great. And likewise, you, Peter, I think, Friends of Hayham Park, if you want to be on there, if you're not already on there.
I think we are, Nigel.
Are you? I'm just losing track. There's just so much on there.
No, of course. Yes, fair enough. Yeah, we are on there,
Yeah. Good.
Just while I think of it, there's Nick speaking on or demonstrating forest gardening on Monday at the Quaker Meeting House from Norfolk Organic Gardeners.
All right. Yeah.
Well, for anybody, but they're hosting it. 7:30, I think.
Yeah. Well, again, if he's got information he'd like to, publicise on the Facebook group. I think
it's on Nog. Oh, maybe I can share it. Nog have put it as an event on Facebook.
The Facebook group is really good for sharing those sorts of things, I think, and I really encourage everyone to use it directly rather than go through me all the time. You're free if you're a member to put those sort of things on. As you say, share them from other Facebook pages or groups and so on. Yeah. Okay. The other thing,
Jenny, is that a face-to-face talk or one of those Zoom meetings?
Face to face at the Quaker Meeting House.
Yes, in Upper Goat Lane, Norwich.
two things I wanted to mention just by way of, I guess, closing. I touched on the Norfolk Green Care Festival earlier. Just to say to you, if you're a project, I mean, Peter, this might be relevant for you, and Anne, likewise. I know you did something last year, Anne, I think, as part of the festival. If you'd like to put an event into the festival that we can promote for you, then we're getting to that point now where we really need to get the ideas in and to start to firm things up. It's going to run from launch, which is the 22nd of July, Saturday, at the Plantation Garden, which are, you know, fantastic venue. And I think Diane Davies, who's coordinating it for us, I think has already got quite a few expressions of interest in having a display or a stall there. Space is a bit limited, obviously, but you know, it will be, I think, a very interesting afternoon. That's like I said earlier, 12 till 4. And then the 2 weeks that follow are really the festival. And what we're going to do is to promote that through our website with a program of the events that you hopefully will let us know about. And obviously, we're keen to see something really in all parts of the county, make it as widespread and engaging as we possibly can. Green care is the theme, but, you know, as I said earlier, there are different shades of green as well. So if it's about biodiversity improvements, it's about food security, if it's about conservation activity, whatever, you know, we can all put it in there. If it's visiting a nature reserve, for example, and things like that. So that's that. And the other thing I wanted to ask you was whether, I mean, no need to answer now if you don't feel able to, but would you like to do a repeat of this meeting in a few months' time, say? I've asked the same question at other gatherings, and there seems to be a sort of consensus coming together of putting another one on in about perhaps 2 or 3 months' time.
Yeah.
How does that sound to you?
Yeah,
That's good.
Okay. And again, it may be something that gathers momentum. We'll get greater numbers next time. I don't know. So I guess based on that, I'll be aiming at perhaps sort of mid-July time, if that's all right. I mean, I'll send perhaps a suggested date when I do a follow-up email, which you can put in your diaries, and I'll again publicise that through our regular newsletters and emails. And then obviously nearer the time, send out an Eventbrite registration link as well. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else anyone wants to pick up on? I know we're coming up to 5 o'clock. So...
Just quickly, Nigel, I'd prefer it if you didn't schedule one for April in future years.
Okay.
February, beginning of March, May is good, but not April.
And the reason being?
2 things. One, it's planting and sowing season in my own garden, and then it's local elections.
Yeah. But
finding an hour out of the day can be quite tricky.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see. I mean, it's not going to suit everyone, I'm afraid. And again, the timing is not suiting everyone. I had, apologies from some people today saying that
we can make some of them.
Yeah. Someone apologised today that he had to do the school run, so he couldn't be with us, you know. So 4 o'clock is not convenient to everyone, but hopefully if it's far enough in advance, people can perhaps at least make an effort to make alternative arrangements and things like that.
And I'm sorry I didn't help either at the launch of your last festival, but it always seems to hit my partner's birthday. So that's never a good day for me to be running something.
Is it the same day then?
Yeah, 22nd of July.
Oh, apologies for that, Jenny.
And then we go away then, beginning of school holidays, birthday.
Right. I was going to say, you bring him along, and we can celebrate with you on the day. All right. Well, thank you all very much for your attendance and contributions. I hope that's been a helpful meeting. As I say, I'll do a follow-up email probably tomorrow once I've got the recording up, and you're okay with sharing your emails, and I'll give you a suggested date. Okay. I'll stop the recording and then say goodbye.